smoothly, or when you want a child to complete chores. What you can do in that case is you can create an incentive chart, a reward chart with your child, and get them involved in it. So the more you get a child involved in, creating a chart with you versus just coming with a chart and saying, ta-da, this is what we're doing, right? They either create it with you, you draw it with them, you go on the computer, you find stickers together. The more they're involved in it, the more they are buying into it. So you can definitely create a reward chart, and I usually love using a reward chart if, let's say, I have a specific behavior that I want to work on. So if a child has to learn to use the potty, a child has to learn to stay in their bed on their own, right? Things like that. I love using reward charts for those because it has a beginning, it has an end, and it's not for, generalized behavior. Now, I want a child to, let's say, complete their routines a little more smoothly, either the morning routines or the nighttime routines. What I like usually at first is to create, let's say, a chart, and that they have a checklist so that they know what they need to do. And it gives them a beginning and an end. Again, beginning and end is really nice for children because then they know they can start learning and gauging how much time they need for something. They don't think like, this is going to take me forever, so that's usually why they don't want to enter something. So they get a set point of a beginning and an end, and that feels really nice to them. So I do use rewards and incentives for, morning routines, for instance, but my go-to is not a reward chart. My go-to is usually to have a checklist of what they need to do, and usually just completing that checklist in itself is inherently valuable to them. But if you see that you do implement this checklist, for instance, with them, that they have to go through the process and that inherently it's not enough for them to be able to get their routine down, and you feel that you do need an external motivator to get there, then it is okay also to have that reward. What I like to do is that when I am using these reward charts for anything, whether it's for chores or for a routine, I like, the idea of delayed gratification, where a child learns to delay their gratification towards completing something. But at the same time, I know that children, especially when they're young, they need that immediate gratification. So I usually use something like a sticker chart that works towards something, or coins, let's say, that works towards something. Because at least once they get a coin or they get a sticker, that's the immediate gratification. But then they have to accumulate a certain amount so that they learn this delayed gratification so that they can get a greater prize or a greater reward. Then when it comes to prizes and rewards, I don't usually like to offer children material things. It's really, you want to look at doing something that's experiential or relational. So experiential would be an experience, let's say going to the playground for longer, bringing a friend over. This is experiential. And then relational is something to do with you and the child. So let's say reading them an extra bedtime story, or spending a little bit more time with them, or taking them out, you and them alone for a certain amount of time. That's the relational motivator. This is not to say that at times we got to pull out the big guns and that we need, let's say a reward to be a toy. But again, you don't want it to be your go-to, okay? So if I know, let's say that, for a child to go to bed and sleep on their own is really, really difficult, then I will do a reward chart that has to do with a toy if that's what they choose. What I like to do when a child, let's say, needs to learn to stay in bed, or any skill that you find is really challenging, I'll usually go online with the child and have them print out something that they really want, and something nice, not a tiny little prize, but something pretty significant. And we print it out, and then I cut it into pieces like a puzzle. And I cut it into pieces of, let's say, how long I think that it'll take a child to be able to master that that skill. And usually we want, 21 days, as they say, is when we master a habit usually. So I usually cut up the paper in, let's say, 21 pieces, almost like a puzzle, and then every day that they complete whatever activity they needed to complete, whether it's staying in their bed a full night, things like that, they get one extra piece of the puzzle that they put together. And when this whole piece is put together, then that's when they get their prize. And kids are very motivated by that. They love it because they could see it being built up every single day. what's a really nice thing to keep in mind though, aside from incentives and motivators, is that routine is a huge piece in helping a child stay on track in terms of behaviors, especially when it comes to either chores or morning routines. If it's inherently something that's part of your family, and this is what we do, let's say we all have breakfast and we all go brush our teeth afterwards. If that's what you inherently do as a family, this kind of routine that's repetitive and it's always the same helps them actually get into the flow, and then you don't need to create these incentives for them to complete those tasks. So don't forget the value. I mean, there's a really powerful value to routine and consistency for children. When they know, they usually step up to the plate, and I want you to keep that in mind, because a lot of times a child will not complete something that we want them to complete only because they don't know. And that's another piece that I want us to really think about, because sometimes, you know, I talk to parents and they tell me, like, I don't know why I have to repeat something so many times. Why can't they just, you know, get the routine together? Sometimes what it is that you want to look at it not behaviorally, that they're being lazy or they're getting distracted, which could be a piece of it, but you want to look at, did I set up my child for success? Some kids, for example, need you to set up their clothing. Some of them need help with putting something on. Some people need you to the child just needs you to share that experience with them because they don't like to be alone in the room to do it. So joining is also a huge, powerful piece to be able to get our children to do things. And again, it's not because these things are going to be like this forever, but when you start with these activities and that you join them, for instance, you won't have to be there every single day. In the beginning, that's what it is, and then the child it becomes part of their own habits and their own morning routine, and so it's just something they inherently start doing. So if you can be a little bit more patient and enter it in terms of joining your child and seeing like what pieces do they need to be able to be successful, you won't need to create rules that your children have to adhere to and that you get frustrated because they're not following that in the morning, for instance, and we're all rushed and we all have things to do. You really want to be mindful of what it is, what the tools they need to be able to be successful.